Every Saturday at 9:07 a.m., the silver Bentley would glide to the curb outside the daily grind, and the entire cafe would collectively hold its breath. Serafina Vance emerged like a storm front in Prada. At 48, she maintained the sharp, polished beauty of a meticulously honed blade. Her blonde bob never shifted in the wind. Her cream-to-colored trousers never wrinkled. Her smile when she deployed it was colder than the diamond weighing down her left hand. "Table 4, Marco," she would say without looking at the manager, already moving toward the corner booth with the best light and the worst reputation. It was the booth where servers' careers went to die. For 2 years, this had been the unshakable ritual. Serafina would order the same thing, an oat milk cappuccino at precisely 62 degrees Celsius, avocado toast on sourdough charred to the very edge of burnt, and she would find fault. The foam was too bubbly, the avocado wasn't Hass, the music was depressingly pedestrian, the air smelled of desperation and poor life choices. Her critiques were surgical, delivered in a voice just loud enough to carry, designed to humiliate. Her husband, Alistair Vance, the tech billionaire, whose name adorned university libraries and hospital wings, was usually the final Saturday sacrifice. He'd arrive late, flustered from some board meeting, and receive a meticulous, quiet dismantling of his character that left him pale and the entire cafe straining not to listen. "Your apologies are as substantial as your attention span, Alistair. Must you wear that tie? It looks like a child's interpretation of success. Sit up, you're not in your garage startup anymore." The staff had a rotation for who would serve her, akin to drawing the short straw. Last month, young Jamie had quit on the spot after Serafina remarked that his acne was distressing to look at before coffee. But this Saturday was different. Maria, the usual Saturday server, had called in sick with a migraine that everyone suspected was just preemptive. Marco, sweating slightly in his crisp shirt, scanned his team with panic. "I'll take table 4. The voice was calm, unfamiliar. Everyone turned. She stood by that espresso machine, tying a fresh black apron around her waist. She'd been hired just days before a temporary fill-in while Marco found a permanent solution. Her name tag Elara. She was somewhere in her late 40s, with dark hair streaked with silver pulled into a simple knot at her nape. She had a stillness about her that seemed to absorb the cafe's frantic energy rather than reflect it. "Alara." "No," Marco whispered, pulling her aside. "You don't understand. She'll eat you alive. She's not normal." Alara's eyes, the color of weathered slate, met his. "I've handled difficult patrons before. This isn't difficult, this is thermonuclear." But the Bentley was at the curb. It was too late. Serafina swept in, the air chilling by degrees. She didn't acknowledge Alara as she slid into the booth and placed her phone, screen down, on the table with a definitive click. Alara approached. She didn't carry a notepad. "Good morning, your usual." Serafina's gaze lifted slowly, a predator assessing new prey. The usual implies a comforting predictability. "I have standards. Do you know the difference?" Alara simply waited, her hands clasped loosely in front of her. With a sigh of profound suffering, Serafina listed her requirements: temperature, the bread, the specific chili flake, the alignment of the stars. Alara listened, nodded once, and turned away. From behind the counter, Marco and the barista Chloe watched the process like a bomb squad, but Alara moved with an unnerving, silent efficiency. She adjusted the grinder setting by a micron. She steamed the oat milk until it was pure velvet, testing the temperature with her wrist, not a thermometer. She selected a specific loaf from the bakery delivery, inspecting its crust with a critical eye before slicing. When she placed the cappuccino and toast on the table, she did so without a word. The cup handle was aligned at a perfect right angle to the table edge. The plate was centered. Serafina stared. Then, from her purse, she produced a digital thermometer. She inserted it into the coffee. 62.0 degrees Celsius. Her eyes flickered. She measured the foam's thickness with a small ruler. She inspected the bread's jar under her phone's flashlight. It was flawless. A muscle in her jaw tightened. She was not used to being denied a fault. The music, she announced to the room. It's giving me a migraine. Change it. Something classical. Vivaldi. The barista Francie. The system was streaming. He didn't know how to comply. Before Marco could stammer an apology, Alara walked to the vintage record player in the Carnera decorative piece, not plugged in for years. She lifted the dust cover, reached behind it, and with a soft click, power hummed through old speakers no one remembered existed. She selected a record from the crate below Vivaldi's Four Seasons and lowered the needle with practiced grace. The rich, vibrant strains of spring filled the cafe. Everyone stared. Serafina's lips parted slightly. Alara returned to polishing glasses. Flustered, Serafina tried again. She pointed to an invisible smudge on her water glass. Without a word, Alara produced a linen cloth, breathed on the glass, and polished it to a diamond-like clarity. When Serafina noted a speck of dust on the windowsill, Alara was there, wiping it away with a touch that left the wood glowing. It was a quiet, impeccable countermove to every complaint, a martial art of service. The climax came when Alistair Vance hurried in, 15 minutes late, his tie crooked. Serafina, darling, the traffic on the bridge. Your existence is an interruption, she began, the familiar, icy cane starting its work. But then her eyes cut to Alara, who had stopped her work and was simply watching, not with judgment, not with pity, but with a profound, unsettling recognition, as if she understood the script, had seen this play before, and knew exactly how hollow the performance was. Under that calm, gray gaze, Serafina's words died, the cutting remark about his incompetence, the sigh about his worthlessness stuck in her throat, the silence stretched, becoming heavier than any insult. Serafina Vance, for the first time in living memory, was silent. She looked from her husband's weary, apologetic face to the flawless table, to the waitress whose silence spoke volumes. She stood up abruptly, leaving her perfect coffee half full. Let's go, Alistair. She left without another word, a queen dethroned by a subject who hadn't even bowed. The following week, the cafe buzzed with the miracle. Serafina Vance had been silenced. The story grew in the telling. The new waitress had hypnotized her, had threatened her, had revealed she was an undercover critic from a powerful publication. Alara said nothing. She simply worked her shifts. Her calm unchanged. But Serafina was not a woman who accepted defeat. The humiliation festered. The silence of that waitress, it wasn't submission, it was assessment, and Serafina felt, for the first time, seen. Not her clothes, not her wealth, not her power, but the brittle architecture of her life. It was intolerable. She returned the next Saturday, not at 9:07, but at 8:55. She brought reinforcements to sleek, equally polished friends from her charity board, women who wielded their social power like scalpels. We'll see about your little miracle worker, she told them. Alara was ready. Today, table for help, not just the usual setup, but a small vase with a single white orchid. Serafina ignored it, introducing her friends with a wave. This is the place I told you about. Quaint, if you like performing your own dentistry. Rebecca, Amanda, meet the staff. The friends smiled sharp, humorless smiles. They ordered complicated drinks with minute specifications, a volley of demands designed to overwhelm. Alara didn't write a thing down. She took their orders with the same quiet attention, then proceeded to orchestrate their service like a conductor. She delivered Rebecca's extra hot, half-sweet, almond milk latte with cinnamon on the side. Just as Rebecca was mentioning she'd forgotten to ask for the cinnamon on the side, she brought Amanda's tea with the honey already dissolved at the perfect temperature. Before Amanda could complain, it was too cold to melt. She anticipated their needs before they were voiced. A splash of water when Rebecca's throat cleared. A clean spoon for Amanda after hers clattered to the floor. Each interaction was a silent checkmate. The friends, initially smug, grew quiet. Their murmured criticisms that China is slightly coarse, don't you think, fell flat when Alara appeared moments later with a different, finer cup and saucer, swapping them without a word. Serafina watched, her blood running cold. It was happening again. This woman wasn't just good at her job, she was dismantling their social weaponry with effortless grace. She was making their meanness look small, their power trivial. Finally, Serafina launched her secret weapon. My husband tells me he's quite taken with this place lately, she said, her voice sugary. Comes here during the week, even, says the service is exceptional. You must have made quite an impression on him, Alara, was it? It was a masterstroke, an insinuation of inappropriate interest, planted in front of witnesses. Alara, who was refilling a water glass, didn't flinch. She set the carafe down, reached into the deep pocket of her apron, and pulled out a simple, black leather wallet. From it, she extracted a small, worn photograph and placed it on the table facing Serafina. It showed a younger Alistair Vance, hair thicker, smile less weary, standing in what looked like a kitchen. His arm was around the shoulders of a much younger Alara. They were both laughing, caught in a moment of genuine joy. In the corner of the photo, a date was scrawled, 2007. I made an impression on him 17 years ago, Mrs. Vance, Alara said, her voice soft for the first time. When I was his head of household, when he was grieving his father, when he worked so hard he'd forget to eat for days, I was the one who made sure there was soup, who made sure the home he was building wasn't just a house. I left my position the month before your wedding. I thought he needed a wife, not a housekeeper. She picked up the photograph, her touch gentle. He comes in on Wednesdays because he knows I work then. He asks if I'm well. He is, as he always was, a kind man who remembers the people who were kind to him. That's the only impression there is. The silence at the table was absolute. Serafina's friends looked anywhere but at her. The truth, delivered without malice or raised voice, was a wrecking ball. Alara had not just been serving coffee, she had been the architect of the domestic peace Serafina had spent a decade disrupting. She knew the man Serafina had turned into a project. She knew the cost of the life Serafina was so desperately policing. Now, Alara said, straightening, can I bring you all a fresh pot of tea? The chamomile is particularly good for agitation. It was the first and last overt thing she would say. She didn't need to say more. Serafina Vance looked at the woman who had loved her husband in the pure, steady way of someone who cared for his well-being when he was still a person, not a provider. She looked at her own perfectly manicured hands, which had never made soup for anyone. The fight drained out of her, leaving something empty and cold in its wake. She didn't return to the daily grind. Weeks later, Marco received a handwritten note on thick, cream stationery. It contained no apology, no explanation, just a single sentence. Please ensure Alara receives the enclosed. Enclosed was a check for $10,000, made out to Alara Sterling. The memo line read, for exemplary service. When Marco handed it to Alara, she looked at it for a long moment, then at the flourishing, icy signature at the bottom. What should I do? Marco asked. Alara took the check, walked to the cafe's community bulletin board, and pinned it there. Beneath it, she wrote on a note card, donation to the Employee Hardship Fund, courtesy of a satisfied customer. She never mentioned it again, but the story circulated through Crestwood Heights show the millionaire's wife had been finally, completely silenced not by a shout, but by a quiet truth, and how the waitress, with her steady hands and quieter heart, had turned a weapon of wealth into a gift for everyone.